We're gonna tell me if you can see my screen and
Yep, looks
all
good.
good?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And then can everybody hear this?
Yes.
Okay, so this will be our little time indicator as we did last time. And Jeff, I'm going to ask if you'd like to say a few
I
words
just want to
before we pick up.
welcome everyone. And again, I want to thank Kristen, who's put a lot of time and effort into this, and I think it's all been very worthwhile so far. And I hope we all appreciate, and at some point we can all give her a hug or whatever, or buy her a beer, but she's really done a super job, and I want her to keep it up. And with that, let's get going.
Okay, Jeff, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. I love prepping for it as much as doing it. So you can see here we have Ed Stroh, John Sovereign, a new member of our club as of a couple of weeks ago or a month ago, and Walt Shoemaker here. And Jeff is going to join the panel as well. We're going to go an hour and a half. It's going to be a very fast hour and a half. I know some of you have to leave, but our agenda really to kick off, we're going to start with 4 topics. We're going to spend the first 70 minutes or so going over those 4 topics. And then we're going to go into what we did last time, which is this kind of Jeopardy. It looks like we don't have as many folks on as last time, so I don't think it's going to be a problem in fitting in as many questions as can be. If Rick does join, we'll be canvassing for questions, but I think we don't have any shy folks on the line here that I see. So please just shout out if you have a question. We're going to first go with panelists, Q&A, prepare questions, and then we're going to move to just open Q&A after that. So please save your questions until we get to that open Q&A. We had last time, you can see the blue line items in our topics. We added 2 more topics on the water and other topics of interest. In red are the ones that we are speaking and talking about today, and starting with actual performance, sailing the B40, sail, rigging, upwind, downwind. Then we're going to move to engine maintenance and upgrades, a lot of questions around that. We're going to do a quick lightning round on tool and gadget time. Jeff is going to present some show and tell physically. He's got some gadgets he's going to show. And then we are going to go around the panel for other gadgets, what worked, what are duds, etc. And then we have the 4th topic is yards for work of best of, Boatyards, non-Hinckley or Hinckley. So there's been a lot of questions around that as well. So to start off, we're going to, talk about, sailing the B40, set up, trim. And in fact, we figure we'll just divide it into, kind of 2 parts. We're going to start with talking upwind, or I'm sorry, downwind first. I'm sorry, is there a question? Everybody with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. By the way, in these photos, you can see, if you have a sloop set up or yawl set up, we have upwind, downwind, reaching. But we're going to start with some Q&A around downwind and various rigging and deck setups. Then we're going to move to upwind. So let's start with John Sovereign. John, by the way, if we can, before we jump into the questions, apologize. I just blew right past the introductions. So John, maybe you can give an introduction for yourself and then move to the other folks, and then we can start with the first question. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I'm John Sabrin. I have Bermuda 40, hull number 90, Black Irish. I didn't grow up sailing, although my dad had a small sailboat that he never used, and my kids actually got me more into sailing through high school sailing. I was a power boater or stink potter, however you want to put it. And when I sold my powerboat when I moved to Newport Beach from LA, and saw Black Irish and bought her just because she was so pretty. I knew nothing about sailing, but it's been a little bit of a love affair, and everybody in the harbor knows the boat. They love the boat. I'm one of a few people left that actually on the West Coast that actually has a pretty boat. Everybody goes to all this fiberglass stuff. I thought I'd kind of, just for the East Coasters, I thought I'd just give you an idea of where Black Irish was. So maybe some of you grew up around it and knew what it was by its previous names. It was originally a mid-wash blue boat called Summer Song 2, owned by Hamilton Keene. In '74, John Starr in Portland, Maine, renamed her Snow Lady. And then Donald Fleming in 1984 renamed her Blue Chip. And then after that, in 1991, she came out to California and was Kokomo, and then Black Irish. And I'm the first person not to rename the boat. It was Black Irish when I bought her.
Wow. I didn't know that, John.
I don't know if anybody knew that boat, when they were younger back there, but she spent most of her time before 1990 in Portland, Maine area.
No, I haven't. Anybody on the call come across Kokomo or Snow Lady or no? So Ed, introduction.
Ed Stroh. I live in Barrington, Rhode Island. I've owned LLE for 11 years now. Prior to that, the name of the boat was Fan, owned by a fellow down in Philadelphia named Gib McIlvain. It's series number 192, built 1985, one of the later ones. I basically sailed all my life. I had the boat down in the Caribbean for 5 years in the BVI when I was living there. And then 5-6 years ago, loaded it on a ship over in Crown Bay, St. Thomas, and they dropped it off right here in front of Hinkley, right here in Rhode Island, 5 days later.
I didn't know that history either, Ed. So fabulous. So Walt.
Walt Shoemaker, the boat Anytime. Her port of call is Annapolis. She's a 972 Mark III yawl. She's series number 113. I'm the 5th owner, and I purchased her in 2004.
You've done a heck of a lot of cruising.
That we have.
And Jeff, our Commodore. Jeff, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Icefire is the last one, hull number 203, built in 1991. It's a little different from most of the others in that it has a Kevlar hull. It sits a little lighter in the water, and it has a little bit taller mast. I'm the 3rd owner. Dr. Franz, who's still a member of our association and was kind enough to call me the other day, was the 1st owner. And I think he took it to Bermuda twice. And then it was Highlander here on the bay. And I don't think those folks did too much with her. And I've had her for 5 years and really enjoyed bringing it back into shape. Not that it was in bad shape when I got it, but really bringing it up to where I want it. And I keep it at Harchies, and I live about 8 minutes from Harchies, which is a nice arrangement right now. So whatever.
Oh, that's great, especially to be so close to the boat. And before we jump into the questions, just I'm Kristen Gant, my husband Rick Applin. We have Elixir, which is a hull number 171, traditionally set up Mark III B40 yawl, and Rick has done a tremendous amount of work on Elixir, interior wise and some exterior. But anyway, without further ado, I can start with John. And we're really trying to get the most out, whether we're cruising fast as we can to get back to the club and dinner, or we're in a middle of a regatta or race. We want most speed out of our B40s. So downwind sailing starting, there's various rig setups, etc. And John, you have a very unique bowsprit setup for your asymmetrical sail. You know, can you explain how you modify Black Irish to accommodate the setup? You know, what's the deck, you know, fittings? You know, how'd you rig it? And I'm gonna ease the conversation by sharing some photos of your deck setup here with your you know, and also a Vang setup you have on the right side. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I bought the boat, the sails were pretty old and crusty, and they were actually still pretty old and crusty when I got my spinnaker, but I was dead set on a spinnaker setup. And although traditionally a lot of people fly a symmetrical spinnaker, and it's probably better for this boat going dead downwind or as close to dead downwind as you can in certain racing formats. We cruise to Catalina a lot, and it's a really nice reach on the way back. And I do it by myself a lot. So having an asymmetrical in a bag was really important to me, just for the point of sail and just for the ease of putting it up. I'll put that thing up to, you know, 20, 25 knots of breeze. So I was not comfortable tying it down to the bow rail like a lot of people do. And you'll see in some of the other pictures. But so I want to do something a little beefier, and I didn't want to trash and drill a bunch of stuff into the boat. So the Selden bowsprit, it comes in longer sizes, but they're a little thicker. This is kind of one of their more mid-length ones. And I was able to take the 3 holes that are in the original, you know, the Hinckley custom-made bow piece there, and just use the existing holes and bolt on a piece of aluminum that could hold that little circle thing you can see. And the nice thing about this bowsprit is you can very easily take it. You can see where it's on the deck with the red line, there's a little D-ring where it mounts to, and you can stick it out. And then there's another D-ring down by you see a little line sitting there, and that's how you run your tack line through that to get some leverage through the line. But you can also unhook it and bring it back to that lower D-ring so it doesn't stick out past the bow pulpit at all. Or you can just completely remove it, which is really nice when you just want to have on opening day or something. You don't want people tripping that on the deck, or you just don't want it out there. But it works extremely well. It allows you to lengthen your luff a little bit by pushing it out there. It just gets a little bit more breeze between it and the furler. So it just works a little better to push it out. If I did it again, I'd probably go with the bigger one so I can push it out even further.
Yeah. So, you know, with that, any questions? We're going to open it up on this topic to folks. Any questions about anyone else have a similar setup or use ASIM?
I use an asymmetrical exclusively. What I've done is I've gotten one of those ATN tackers, which like a rigid fiberglass U-shaped thing. It almost looks like a knee brace. And it clips around your furled head sail. And then you take the line and you secure it to the deck cleat. So you're actually not putting any pressure or stress on your pulpit. And you also have the ability to, like, you know, raise it and lower it up and down the furled head sail. So it gives you more flexibility. It's very easy to use. It's great. I know that Rick Stanford was interested in that system. I don't know if he ever ended up getting one.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not sure, and even if Celerity is fully completed yet. I know she's splashed, but not sure about the setup. Rick came on. Walt, do you use a pole spinnaker setup or ASIM?
Yeah, I have both an ASIM and I have a tri-radial. The spinnaker pole is on the mast, but for the ASIM, how I do it is the downhaul at the foot of the sail. I actually bring through. I was showing Rick. I bring it through a shackle on one of the holes that's shown on John, up in the 4P, the iron piece. I have a shackle there, and the line actually comes through that shackle and then goes back to the cleat, and that's how I control the sail. I don't leave mine up at 20, 25 knots. Most I leave mine up is probably 14 knots, probably the most I have it up. Once the wind gets higher, then I douse it, because mine's only 3/4 inch ounce, as opposed to the tri-radial, which is I think an ounce and a quarter. It's a heavier sail.
Any tricks? I know you use your mizzen staysail fairly.
Oh,
Any tricks or additional deck fittings other than factory?
well, the deck, for example, we'll talk about space first. And the eyes that go into midship, that's great for the staysail. When I set up, if I actually staysail down and the lines over to the other side, I did the same thing with ASIM.
Mm-hmm.
And not the tri-radial. The tri-radial we can flip over to the other side. It's very reliable. When I bring that Sally down, it just collapses that sail and makes it relatively easy to handle from whichever, port or starboard.
Thanks for that. Any questions from our members?
One other thing
Go ahead. Sorry. Well, can you?
I have a question, Chris.
Yeah. Hi, Peter.
How far in front of the stem fitting does the bowsprit that you have on Black Irish, John? How far out are you putting it? It looked to be about 2 feet.
Yeah, it's about that. I'm a custom, and I think I'm 15'9" from the front of the mast to the end of the bow pulpit. So it does increase the rating from that standpoint. But you could put I could put a third D ring in that pushes it a little bit further forward for light wind cruising. Selden has, you see, there's a lot of inboard part of that pole. I think it's a pretty conservative way to fly it. But like if it's less than 10 knots, you could probably push that thing out another 1.5 feet, which would be helpful. I haven't put that ring in because I have a feeling I'd probably use it when I'm not supposed to.
Yeah, no. I got that. I'm just trying to figure out, what load rating you basically designed it for.
Well, so the Selden has, when you buy, you can look at their things online, all the specs on it, and you can go with a thicker pole, and it's kind of like 1/3 out, 2/3 in. And so if you want to go further out, you just have to get a 5-inch pole or something like that. You can go bigger. And they also have carbon poles if you want to spend the money on that. But you could push it further out. I just thought I was mainly doing it just for strength. I wasn't trying to get too racy with the boat. I just wanted something that would work, and I wasn't comfortable with putting it on the bow pulpit.
Fine. And do you have a sock for the spinnaker, or do you have it on a firm?
do have it on a sock. You know, I'm not sure. It would be nice to have a furler. I mean, those have come a long way, but I definitely use a sock, and it works. It's fine. I actually sail and put it up by myself all the time.
John, this is Rick Stanford. What keeps the bowsprit from moving laterally? Does it run up and back and forth on a track or what?
No, it's just there's a D-ring that the tail end of it bolt just pops down onto. There's like a little clip, and you just push on it, it comes off, and then you snap it back on. And then to put it away, I bring it back to about 3 feet, and there's another D clip, and I just put it there, and then it doesn't stick out anymore. It's very easy to move and remove. It's as simple as it could be. I mean, it literally would take me less than 30 seconds to move it or take it off. It just slides right out of that ring. It's pretty ingenious, actually. I did take some plywood, some marine plywood, and I put it underneath the deck, just so that there was a little bit more strength. And I bolted it down between the 2 D rings that are there, just to give a little bit more stiffness to the deck. Because if it's blowing really hard, that tail end, you get a lot of lift on the end of that pole, and it does put some heavy. It can put some heavy load on the deck. It probably was not necessary what I did, but I was just being careful.
Great.
Did you have to drill holes in your bow piece, or did you use the holes that were already there that are?
Yeah, if you look at the center low picture, you'll see there's about a 3/4 inch piece of aluminum. I first made a template out of wood. I took it to my friend's machine shop. We made that template we created a piece of aluminum and did 3 bolts through the 3 different eyepieces that the forestay goes down to. All those bolt holes were there. So I just used what was there. I didn't want to drill anything into that piece because it's such a custom piece. And then I just had the aluminum anodized, and then put a piece of PVC tape on it before I bolted it to the stainless. So it's totally removable with no scars on the boat. There's 3 small screws that you use, or bolts that you use on the D rings that I had to put in the deck. So, but that's easily fixable.
Thanks for that. I don't see any other questions. And Rick, you're there. Will you be fielding questions for us today? Stanford, I just heard you ask a question, so
Yeah, the Wi-Fi here at the marina isn't everything you could hope for.
okay.
So I had to set up a alternate hookup thing. So as you can see, I'm actually on the boat.
That's great. Okay, so you'll be monitoring chat window. I can close it right now from my end. Awesome. Okay, thanks for your help. Appreciate it. So we're going to switch gears. Unless there's any other questions around downwind sailing. I mean, even for speed, tricks, tips, for getting the most out of, B40 going downwind. I think we've, we can switch gears to upwind sailing. And
I have a downwind question, if I may.
oh, sure, yeah.
I've got just a full tri-radial spinnaker that I fly on the perfect day or got the right conditions for a long trip, but I don't have an asymmetrical. But I was wondering, does anyone use a whisker pole, and would my spinnaker pole double as a whisker pole, or it's probably too long? Any experience with that or comments on whisker poles for downwind sailing?
Well, this is Jeff Tobias. The boat came with a incredibly long spinnaker pole that with one other person was never going to be used. So I took that off the boat and I installed a whisker pole that sits permanently on the mast. and it's on a track, and I can bring it down and hook it onto the jib fairly easily. And for my short-handed sailing, I find that more practical than using an asymmetrical spinnaker and having a snuffer or stuffer or whatever. And I've been fairly pleased with the permanently affixed whisker pole. So you're not up there dancing around trying to hook one end onto the mast and get the other end onto the sail. One end lives on the mast, and it's on a track.
My spinnaker pole is mounted just like you described, but I've never used it as a whisker pole. I kind of thought it was too long, but I never tried it, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly the spinnaker pole that came with the boat would be way too long for that. You know, the one that came with my boat.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely impractical for me to use.
Thank you.
I have a telescoping whisker pole on my boat. So it's really easy, you know, to hook it onto the clew, and then I hook it onto the mast, and it's got a like a continuous line arrangement. So you just pull the line and then it telescopes out. So you're not dealing with this big, long, bulky, unwieldy thing.
Ed, is your whisker pole attached to the forward part of your mainmast, or is it down on deck?
No, it lives in the deck chocks that originally held the spinnaker pole.
We use the same setup. We have a whisker pole that's extendable. So if we don't want to put the spinnaker out and we're just doing some bay cruising, it's light air, we'll do that. And they work great.
Yeah, and it's a lot lighter than a spinnaker pole. It's a lot shorter. It's collapsed. So for me, it's just a lot more user-friendly.
Okay, so why don't we switch gears to upwind? And, you know, one of the biggest questions that have come out are, you know, deck fittings for jibs and whatnot. In some cases, you know, inner forestays and backstays, nav, tech, hydraulic adjusters on the backstays, vangs, and as I mentioned, tracks. So, you know, maybe start Ed, you know, any kind of tack or deck fittings and other modifications. Actually, I'll open up to anyone on the panel for upwind sailing that you've done beyond, you know, the factory.
My boat came with, when I bought it, it had a hull quick vang that had been installed. Just a rigid spring-loaded vang, which I'm really happy with, very pleased. That's really the only custom or upgrade you could say as far as upwind sailing that the boat has. I do have a NavTech hydraulic backstay, but I usually use that for downwind instead of upwind. And you know, basically, I watch my telltales. I adjust my cars on the tracks on top of the tow rails. Kristen, I think you had a point in your notes or something about, you know, is it best to bury the tow rail or just, you know, have 15 or 20 degrees of heel. I love to bury the tow rail, but it's not very efficient. I mean, you really slow the boat down if you've got the tow rail buried.
Yeah, we've seen pictures of your boat.
So if I'm racing, I try not to bury the tow rail.
This is Ed's boat, upper left here.
Yeah, actually, it's not buried there. It's just in a trough.
Just the way, right?
But the other picture, taken from the helicopter, there in the lower right, The problem that day was we should have had a double reef and we only had one. So we were basically out of control.
You can tell Ed's boat, that's the one with all the crew falling over.
Right. Holding on for dear life.
Yeah, I know doing
Get those guys out on the rail.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
It's a little trail of human heads behind the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I would say, yeah, I would agree. I mean, we've got a Vang on our boat, and when I got my boat, it did not have a Vang of any sort. And I went with Vang Master for a couple reasons. Number one, the guy that makes Vang Master is a guy named Doug Grant. He's a famous guy that makes a lot of redoes a lot of Cal 40s here, and his dad started a air cylinder company, and he sailed a lot with his dad, and he got really tired of the Vang making that noise, that and so he made this air powered Vang. You just pump it up with a bike pump, and it's really nice. It's got you put a piece of ABS tubing in it to the length that you want, so it actually acts as your topping lift. You don't need a topping lift for it. You just set it as low as you want it. So even if it runs out of air, it's got a bottom point. I've got a 6-to-1, Harkin setup on there, and I just run that back to the cockpit. So it's super easy to control. It works extremely well, extremely quiet, very strong. And that was even for downwind and upwind, you have to have a Vang if you want to get max performance out of your boat.
Well, do you find that it gets in the way of the hatch?
No, it's designed. So you just have to put it when you mount it to the boom. You just got to be careful with that measurement. Just basically hold it up with the hatch open and make sure you're clear. But I've got plenty of space there, and it's probably at a 45-degree angle or so.
Yeah, good question. Walt, I know last month you talked about centerboard placement. How about just kind of for upwind on a close haul, let's say, how would you recommend our centerboards be placed?
Okay, so this has been my experience. When I was talking close haul, Mark III, generally don't let the boat go more than 15 to 17 degree keel. In true wind, between 7 and 10 knots, 30 cranks on the centerboard, 20 to 30. 10 to 15 would go 30 to 40. Anything over 15, then I go 50, 60. That's about as far as I go. If you look at on the 120 cranks that the handle has and the foil that's generated, as you're heeling, that's pretty much the best foil that you're having as the boat is going through there. If you're out in the middle of the ocean, might be different where you might want to put out a little bit more on the swells, maybe to prevent sideward motion. But that's been my experience. And on the day we at the sites, the numbers that I've just given you are what my experience is with my boat and what I call for when I call for the crew to turn, either the crew or if it's on autopilot, for me to go down below to put the centerboard down.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
on our end, I'm kind of like, I want as much lift as I can get when I'm going upwind. So I'm bored all the way down if I'm going upwind, unless it's incredibly light. I find it helps fight current and everything else to just keep lift going towards windward. And then on downwind, we're all the way up, even if it's blowing, 20, we keep the board all the way up, just less wetted surface to go faster downwind and take some pressure off the mast.
Yeah, my experience with the board is that it helps you to track much better. And if you have a chart plotter, you can really
see that.
tell the difference. The board's up or if the board's down. If you're reaching.
Great. No, thanks, Ed. And by the way, John, coming from a motorboater, that's pretty impressive. You speak in the language there.
I have kids that yell at me what to do all the time. I'm picking it up.
Okay, so we're going to open it out. I'm going to ask Rick to take any questions that have come in through chat. And
Well, there was one question. What model, John, what model Vang do you have?
Sorry, I had to. I'm sorry.
What model Vang do you have?
You know, they're all the same. Vangmaster's all the same. It's just the size. And this is kind of they make them for really big boats. They make them for small boats. They make them for the I think they're like spec on Melgis 24s. They're pretty big in the racing world, but you just have, it's the size of your boat. I'll follow up with an email and let you know what size it is.
Okay.
any other questions?
Yes, I just had a question about the center
Hey,
board.
Patrick.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for
Hi.
setting up another great call. We talked a lot about that on our last call, and I just had a question on maintenance on those. As far as the pin and the mechanism goes, is that something that you really need to inspect periodically, or are they pretty bulletproof? I mean, what have other people done to make sure that hinge doesn't fail, or is it just rock solid?
The 17 years that I've owned mine, the biggest thing is putting oil in the centerboard cavity. And one thing I never knew until somebody pointed it out a couple days ago, there's a grease fitting right where the handle fits on top that you can grease the screw. And other than that, board actually rattles back and forth a little bit in the cavity when we're anchored, and there's a way where eventually you can get it to where it's there have been some things that yards have suggested that they could do to stiffen it up, but Rick is the one that has the best picture of what happens when Rick Ed, in which his board actually, it's pretty alarming when you see the rod came up through the cabin.
Yes.
And
I have
when
a
Walt
lot of
says oil,
I've been on the water a lot, but
when Walt says oil, he means vegetable oil, not motor oil. And what you do is when you
Yes.
launch the boat,
not what they originally. Right.
Sorry, Walt, you broke up there. What was that?
Ed was the one that was talking.
okay. I was saying that
He was talking.
the way that you add the oil, the centerboard trunk, is when you launch the boat, still in the slings, you jump on board and you have them lift the boat up about 6 inches. And then you open up that fitting on top of the centerboard trunk. And I have a funnel with a hose that I have to step down so it'll actually fit into that opening. And then I pour about a quart of vegetable oil right into the top. And it'll just rest there because it's lighter than the water. And it'll lubricate the worm gear as you crank it up and down. And then when you haul the boat, I mean, it just drops out of the trunk.
Now, in my
Oh.
case, I do 3.5 quarts. The original B40 manual that was done by the association, that's what they indicate. And I don't have it in the slings. Mine's actually in the water, but I do the same thing Ed does. I have a funnel that I have a tube that fits down into the hole, but I put 3.5 quarts of vegetable oil in mine.
So what kind of vegetable oil do you use? Because you're going to be horrified, but the folks at my yard, every time I've done the bottom, we've put a quart of motor oil in there.
Oh,
At least
no.
that's what we used.
That's what they did in the old days. I used, and it's like frying oil, relatively inexpensive. It's like $4 or $5.
You just use like
container. So
you just use like Mazola oil, right?
Yeah, or even the house brand at the supermarket, which will be cheaper than Mazola. But that's, corn oil, or, that's what you use.
Yeah.
It's
So this is, we're.
biodegradable.
Tons of things that we can carry forward. In fact, ultimately, when we get our website up and going, we'll have chats and carry forward chats that remain on. Great conversation and so much to talk about. We're going to move to engine maintenance. There's a lot to talk about here as well. Folks have either, retooled or repowered or changed out or rebuilt. So a number of questions before we get into the actual, choices in engines and whether they be common rail or traditional, diesel. But some of the early quick questions to get out of the way here are, there've been back and forth on fuel capacity, tank capacity, certainly with no kind of fuel gauge itself. Specifically, what is the capacity? How do you fuel it? How do you fill it? Know it's full, just these simple questions.
know the
And I'll
answer
start off with Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
I'm sorry.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that the tank capacity is 48 gallons. Because when I repowered, I pulled the tank out and I had it cleaned, and they had to cut.
It's only 48 gallons?
48 gallons. They had to cut a access port in each, between each baffle in the tank. So of course the tank was totally empty when they did that. And I asked them specifically, when you fill the tank, how many gallons did it take? They told me 48.
What year is your B40?
1985.
85. Do you think, I mean, I have a 1970, and the tank says it's empty, and then I fill it up and it says 27 gallons, but I know there's more in there.
No.
Do you think that the older boats had a similar sized tank?
Mine's a
I think so.
72, and I can tell you I have exactly 48 gallons, and mine was from fuel starvation. Unfortunately, that's the way to find out it.
And do you have the old Monel tank?
It holds it. I have the old Monel tank. I had the 4107 Westerbeek in there. The earlier B40, some of them I've been told had 40 horse or 40 gallon tanks, but the later ones, are, from what I've been hearing from experience, 48 gallons.
Aquila is 1963, and I'm quite sure I've got about 45 gallons.
Okay.
So
So,
just so you guys know, when the boat was originally delivered, it had a 28-gallon tank.
Interesting.
Really?
Really?
So maybe I do have 27 or 28 gallon tank, and I'm getting real close to empty.
Well, no. I mean, I've got the Henry Hinckley tank stamp on it, and it says 28 gallons. And I'm an engineer, and I've done the math on filling and sounding and all that. I got a 28-gallon tank.
Does it say 28 gallons on top of it?
It does.
Okay, maybe I just need to look harder.
On the port side front corner is where my plate is.
Okay.
But it's a 1960, and the tank originally held gasoline. Just so you know.
Yeah, mine's an 83, and it doesn't. It's the original. Well, it used to be the original model tank, but it didn't have a plate on it at all.
Does anyone have any tips on removing the large bolt with the fuel gauge on it? Mine's frozen.
I used a big wrench.
Just with a breaker bar on there, huh?
Patrick, do you have that mechanical fuel gauge?
I do. I have a 69, and it has
Yeah.
the mechanical, and then it's got a plate under the bolt. I don't know, it's like 8x10 plate that's got a bunch of bolts on it. And I want to remove that and inspect the tank, but I want to take the nut off first, or the bolt off first, just so I can kind of peek in there. And it's, it's pretty frozen after all these years.
I would try to use some brake free or PB Blaster, and try like a butane torch. Just to loosen up the threads, or loosen up the corrosion.
You're a fuel tank?
Oh, we're talking
There's
diesel.
Not a gas tank. Maybe a diesel tank, not a gas tank.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking
but I don't
diesel.
know, still.
Yeah, and then as far as replacing the plate, use like a Permatex type of gasket, liquid gasket material, some kind of a blue caulk or material in there between the tank top and the plate.
So Ed, switching, you mentioned something on our call around oil filter sensors. Anything you want to add about that before we go into the beta versus the common rail?
Sure. Well, those three pictures you see there at the top, the middle picture shows my old Westerbeek, the 4108. And the picture to the left and to the right shows the new Beta 43. So in the middle picture, you can actually see that remote oil filter up on the bulkhead. So the boat came with that before I repowered, and I really liked it. I mean, it's so easy to use. Without that remote filter, the oil filter on that Westerbeek would have been mounted horizontally. And, they say put a plastic bag around it and this, that, and whatever, but it would have just been a horrible mess every time you changed it out. So with the vertical orientation of the filter on that remote bulkhead mount, so easy to take off. It's not messy. You don't drip anything. It's just really user friendly.
Say it speaks to your phone?
Pardon me?
Did you say it spoke to your phone?
No, it does not speak to my phone.
Okay,
No,
that was
no.
another gadget.
So
now, or that we're on the topic of the benefits of a beta engine diesel, traditional versus common rail. Can you go over kind of what some of the reasons you chose the beta?
Sure. I do all the maintenance on the engine myself. So not that I do a lot of offshore cruising, but I could foresee a situation where if you were offshore and you had a common rail diesel, you're going to get an error code, and there's nothing you can do about it because you don't have the special cable to hook into your computer to tell you what that error code means. So I didn't want to go the route of not being able to fix something because I don't know what the problem is. So going with the Beta 43, it's a tier 3 engine as far as emissions are concerned, but it's it's what I would call a traditional engine.
So EPA was a consideration for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely EPA compliant. Beta has great support in this country. It's a Kubota block, and this is awesome. You know, for anyone that owns a Yanmar, I can go to any tractor dealer that handles Kubota, and you know the filters and the fuel filter, this, that, whatever. It's the same part number at the tractor dealer, and also in the case of Beta. So you don't have to cross-reference part numbers, and all those basic parts, you know, those are the ones that you're going to be using. You're not going to spend your arm and a leg for them.
How about you, Walt? What prompted you to go with Common Rail and from your old Westerbeek?
Okay, well, I wanted to go with the Yanmar because we had another vessel that had the Yanmar and I was very happy with it. But at the time when I looked at it, they did not make the traditional diesels anymore. They started making in 2014 or 15 was when they switched over to Common Rail. I used Old Port Marine in Newport, Massachusetts, and I gave them a whole criteria of what I wanted the engine to do, and they were able to satisfy all of them except one, and that was an emergency start down below in the cabin. So the pros of the engine, it's quieter, it is more fuel efficient, it's easy starting, it doesn't have glow plugs. What it does is it actually heats the fuel to 100 degrees Fahrenheit before you start it, figures out the barometric pressure and the humidity and everything. And then today, I got the engine ready and just pushed the button and on it came. Ed had good points, and that is that the fuel filters and the oil filters are more expensive. You have to go to a Yanmar dealer. And the fuel filters themselves, if memory serves me correctly, are like about $120, and the oil filters, you know, you have to buy a more part. The plus is that the engine is so clean burning that you only have to change the oil once a year or every 250 hours. So that's a good thing. The other thing I liked about the Yanmar is that with the computerized panel, while you're running the boat in sea conditions, you can actually go to the computer to figure out, you know, your torque curve, what your throttle effort, what effort it is on the business or on the engine, and how much fuel you're burning. It will calculate that. So at any rate, there is the downside. It's a computer panel, and you cannot touch those injectors. I worked on my old engine and would replace injectors. These injectors, instead of being 2,000 PSI, are actually 20,000 PSI. So it takes a technician, you know, if you have problems, you're going to have somebody work on it. I had 880.5 hours a day. I'm starting my 4th season, and I've only had the engine looked at for the service maintenance at 500 hours. I'm very happy. And there is one other plus. I don't know if Ed can do this with his or not, but you can with the Yanmar. Yanmars, you can actually leave in neutral when you're sailing and allow the prop to spin, and it does not do damage to the transmission. And I consequently got rid of my max prop, which was getting ready to wear out. And I spin a 3-bladed 16x13 prop, and quite frankly, can't tell the difference when I have it in neutral when I'm sailing.
Thanks, Will. I think we've run out of time on this topic, a little bit over, but that was very, very helpful. I think anyone who does have questions about engine, please send your questions to the B40 email, and we'll get back to you offline. Okay. So our next session is to look at, let's see if I can go to next year. I'm jumping back. Sorry. Okay, we were going to do the lightning round, and Jeff was going to give us a bit of a show and tell for 5 minutes. And let me see if I can get, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Jeff
Yeah,
can highlight.
okay.
Okay, I've spotlighted you now, so
Oh, I
feel
see.
free to go with your gadgets. We're going to say what kind of cool gadgets you know,
All
have
right.
really paid off.
The first one is, it's a fairly new device. It's called a Mantis Snap-on Light. And it has, here's what it looks like. It's not very big. And it has a little device that snaps onto the rail or stanchion. And so you can get at it very quickly. And it has three brightnesses for the white, and it also, and you can see it increasing, and it'll flash and it'll do other things. And you can also use it as an anchor light. It will turn itself off when it gets bright enough and turn itself back on when it's dark. And it is rechargeable. It's all LED, and the thing comes with a little wire to recharge it. So that's proved to be rather handy, and it covers a lot of different things. It's just a good thing to have in the cockpit for sailing at night. Now, I used to use for a searchlight something with a long wire that plugged in. That wasn't very convenient. And then I was using one with the old 6-volt lantern battery. That wasn't very convenient either. So I bought one of these Dr. LED lights, and it's again rechargeable, and it holds a charge for quite a long time. And it has, you can see it's really quite bright, and various brightnesses. And one little feature that I found handy when I've had other people sailing at night, it has a little red dot. If you can, I don't know if that shows up at all, but you can point out things in the cockpit at night by pointing the little red laser light around. And so that's proved to be fairly useful. Probably the best toy in my advanced age, where I'm going deaf and my crew is even more deaf, I use this device when we're, particularly when we're anchoring. And I don't have to yell neutral, ahead, right, left, or whatever, or when we're coming up on a mooring. We can just literally whisper to each other. And this is all there is. There's no other device. And each one of these has a volume control on it. So the person who's using it can adjust it any way you want. And each one, the one thing that's a little annoying with it is doesn't hold a charge too long. And each one of the devices has a battery, and it's easy to forget to turn off both of them. So I just take the batteries out when we're not using it and put it in the little recharger block. And the batteries look something like camera batteries. And here are the two of them, and they just fit into the device that's on your ear. And that's proved to be very helpful with regard to nerves and people keeping calm and so on. Now, the last device, I haven't had too much experience with this. I just bought it this past season. It's something called a winch right, and it's a portable battery-powered winch handle. And you have a little button here, which is which direction. So with the 2-speed winch, in fact, it's high or low speed. And you press that to get the direction, and then you squeeze the handle and it makes a little noise. And then it goes. And then you can go in the other direction. And it's really nice for getting the main up quickly when you don't want it to get it caught in the jack lines and so on. And again, this is rechargeable, and it's quite heavy, but it holds a charge for quite a while. And it takes a little getting used to getting it into the winch without banging things up. But those are 4 items that I found have been worthwhile. And I can list them on the, Kristen, I can just give you the, the part number and list them for the website or whatever, so that if anyone wants to go look for it, they can find it. I bought the Mantis at Faucets, the Dr. LED I got at Defender, the winch ride I bought from the manufacturer, and the EarTech, the headphones, were from Amazon. And they're all easy to get.
Those are great. Those are great, Jeff. And I'm talking to Rick about those headphones already. So yeah, no, that's great. So thank you, Jeff. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the screen and we're going to do a lightning round where each of the rest of our panelists will have a minute to go through gadgets that they find are either the biggest dud or biggest payoff, and they do not have a gadget. They have an option to pass the question to an audience member or a panelist. So I'm going to start with
Kristen,
Ed. Yep.
Kristen, before you do that, there was a question about if you have like a Westerbeek, what if you not want to keep the engine in neutral, what's best? Do you keep it in forward or reverse?
Reverse.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Rick. And whoever asked the question, thank you. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to set my timer. Hold on. Any other questions while I set my timer?
There was a question about the earphones, but I didn't see the whole question. Someone asked about them, but I didn't.
It had been the model and manufacturer.
The manufacturer.
EarTech, EARTECH.
Are they Wi-Fi or
No.
Bluetooth?
No, they just talk to each other.
I mean, and how does that happen?
Well, there's a little radio transmitter in each one. It's just a tiny built-in walkie-talkie in each of the headphone sets. And you can buy them for multiple sets. I don't know if that didn't have any use to me, but you can buy them so 5 of them talk to each other. But I just bought the 2 that talk to each other.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering because Kate wears hearing aids, and sometimes you can get hearing aids that have pick up Wi-Fi, and you can. I
don't think this. I didn't. It wasn't a concern of mine. I don't remember seeing anything like that in the blurbs about it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah, definitely information I want to pick up on too, because that's going to be your next purchase there. Okay, so I'm going to start with Ed, and some of these photos are from, or I'm sorry, I have John Saverin, but Ed, these are your photos, right?
Yeah, these are my pictures.
Okay, so I'm going to start. Ready, go.
All right, so on my outboard, I have a magnetic plate that LED light fits onto. So it just pulls right off, and you can set it so it's, any combination. I have the picture showing all 3. The middle picture, there's a deck fitting for a stand-up block on my side decks, and I had that little stainless steel plug made for it so it wouldn't fill up with debris and junk and whatnot. And then finally, that it's a picture of my blanking plug for the speed sensor. And I don't want the thing rolling around down in the bilge, so I put a little stainless steel fitting on the athwartship brace, and I made a stainless steel cable, which I spliced, and that's it.
Sorry. It's not, I'm still getting used to that. Sorry, Ed.
It's okay, I was done.
That was pretty darn close. Man, that was pretty good. Okay, so let's see. It's Walt's turn, and we're gonna go with Walt right now. Starting now.
Okay, good enough. The Redmond up at the top is LED rechargeable, and we use that for making smoothies. The one thing that is a disadvantage, it is glass, but we keep it in that box. These are all my favorites. Okay, the next one is we're big after a long day sail of having margaritas in the afternoon, and that is an ice tray with a lid on top. In case you've healed, the lid's going to keep the water from going out. The next two items down below, these are male 30 amp to a 110 plug, and the other one is from the boat, a 30 amp to plug into an extension cord. They come in very helpful in the yard. So I do a lot of my own yard work, and that's how I'm able to where I can get the current into the boat and get it down below. Fishing rod holder down below, removable, and I have a chamois sleeve on the inside to make it so it doesn't scratch the stanchion. Last but not least is the Aero Latte that we use for whipping cream on the boat. If we have cream, that's what we use.
Oh, that
Go
was
ahead.
worth the extra minute, extra couple seconds. I'm sorry. I like the latte part. So we're gonna pass now to Jeff. Or I'm sorry, we got Jeff at John. Would you like to take your time or pass your time? I know we didn't have a picture, but
John said earlier that he had to leave.
oh, we did. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then please, Walt, feel free to finish or pass to an audience member to share their goodies.
I'll pass to an audience member.
Well, I'll jump in because you reminded me with the knot meter. I replaced the paddle with the new Airmar sensor, and it took a little bit of wiring, a little bit of work, a little bit of conversation with the manufacturer, but it does work very well, and it's much better than a paddle.
Cool. Okay, so thanks for that. I'm gonna throw one real quick one in. These are very inexpensive, but it's Rick's idea. Those little lights that you put in your yard that are solar powered for your, garden. Well, you can actually put them in one of these, fishing pole, the holder in the aft part of the, the deck. And it actually illuminates the app. If you're having a party on board, kind of makes the party space seem a lot larger when you have those illuminated back there. And of course, there's no wiring because they're all solar, etc. But anyway, that's our little cool gadget. Very inexpensive. But okay, so we are going to move to the next topic. We have received a lot of questions about boatyards and Hinckley boatyards, non-Hinckley boatyards. We had John had 3 that were available on the West Coast, and he was a Basin Marine goer. So Patrick is on, not sure if you two, but we were just gonna kind of open it up for each of the panelists to talk a little bit about, kind of pros and cons, if you will, boatyards and what you can expect from Hinckley. Rick, I know you had some experience in having a part remanufactured by Hinckley. So feel free to chime in there. And then lastly, this picture of the Elixir, our boat. You can see the damage here on the left from last year, and we're using Johansson on the right up in Maine at this point to do some wonderful work. So I'm gonna hand it off to Rick. Perhaps you can start off with Hinckley experience, and then we'll just kind of go around and feel free to have an open conversation with those who are still on the line from the members. Rick?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, there was always like your husband is Rick.
Yes, indeed. Okay, Rick S.
Well, I haven't had too much, good experiences with. Well, actually, it's interesting because I was just talking with Dominic, and he says that the Hinckley Yard in Oxford, Maryland, is closed. They've closed that yard.
Permanently, or?
That's what he tells me. And that's probably for the good. Like I mean, just an example. I had you have a garbage drain that takes a 1-inch plug, and so I called the Hinckley people and I said I need a garbage drain, a 1-inch plug, and they said, okay, come on over. Yeah, we got some. Fine. So I drove over to the place. When I got there, they said, no, we don't actually have one. We looked at the wrong thing. All we have is a 1/2-inch plug. And so I said, okay, well, just give me 2 of those. And the guy looked at me and says, well, will that work? I said, no, it won't work. And then he said, he said he was going to order one and get it to me. And about a week and a half later, after 2 phone calls, he emails me. He says, well, we really don't have one. We can't get one. And he linked me to McMaster Carr for a plug, but he linked me to the McMaster Carr plugs that were brass. And I don't think I want to put a brass plug in the bottom of my boat. So that was no good.
You, Rick, had some good experiences with your worm gear, the lost part that had to be refabricated, correct?
Well, they did do that when I was taking the worm gear out of the centerboard. They have a split washer at the top, and of course I didn't know anything about it, and so I was taking things apart, and sure enough, as soon as I was taking it apart, 1/2 of the split washer falls down the centerboard trunk. Oh, geez. And so I emailed the Southwest Harbor folks, and I sent them a picture of the worm gear with a little arrow pointing to where the washer was. And I asked them if I had to take measurements and that sort of thing. And they said, no, we got it. And so they actually sent me a new split washer that fit my worm gear, and they sent me a piece, a drawing, an engineering's drawing of my worm gear with Celerity's contract number at the top. And so some people have records of every boat, but it's hit or miss whether or not you actually can get everything or not. So I have about maybe 5 or 6 emails to the Southwest Harbor people looking for things like the toilet paper holder and the little rubber boots that go on the shrouds, various other things that like Ed, the little latch on your companionway doors. And so sometimes I get responses back, sometimes I never hear back from them again. So it's hit or miss.
Yeah. So actually, Jeff, any commentary about Hinckley, non-Hinckley boatyards and experiences? Is Jeff on?
Hey, Jeff, you're
He's
muted.
muted.
Damn it. When I bought the boat, it was in the Hinckley shed in Easton, and I had the Hinckley yard in Oxford install a bow thruster. They did an excellent job. They just took forever doing it, and they were very non-responsive when I would inquire about what are we doing, where are we going, how is this being done? And the transmission on the boat also needed a lot of work. And they just took forever and they were non-responsive. The fellow who was there at the time is long gone, and now the yard's closed. So I wouldn't go back to Hinckley. And I guess I don't even have that choice anymore. But they knew what they were doing, but the management of the yard was terrible.
Yeah, that the Easton facility is pretty good. Like you said, they know what they're doing. They really helped me out a lot. I go and talk with them and ask them how to do things. I don't have them do it, but they're willing to give me tips and hints and show. They laugh at me a lot, but then they wind up. They gave me like a quart of all grip paint. They gave me a longboard to sand the side of my boat down. So they're helpful, but like you said, if you have them do it, yeah, you're in for a long wait.
Yeah.
Walt, how about you? Experiences?
Well, I'm not my relationship with Hinckley doing work on the boat has been nil since I bought the boat. I had to do a little bit of work, and that was enough for me to move on. I'm a big fan of Burr Brothers up in New England. They're in Marion, Massachusetts. They're familiar with Hinckley's. The yard, they house like 12 Hinckley's over the winter, and I'm talking sailboats, and most of them B40s. They have a wood shop. They have an incredible paint shop. As a matter of fact, Ed's boat was painted there. And they just do good work. And what I do in the summer when I go up to New England is I have a punch list for them to take care of. For example, this year, getting a new holding tank. And so they are having me measure it, order it from the company, and have it delivered there. And when I show up the second week in July, they'll get it done. And that yard, I can tell you, of all the yards I've been to, hustles. They treat their employees right, but at 7 o'clock when they start, they're working. And they have, I've just had a good experience with them. The other yard that I use on the Chesapeake that I've had good experiences with, which is more do-it-your-own work, is at Smith Marina, which is on the Severn River, just off of St. Helena Island. One thing that I can say that's wonderful about Smith Marina, I'm going to have them do the work. Rick Smith, who owns the marina, does glass work. And his fiberglass work is just incredible. John Melchner can vouch for him. But at any rate, those are the primary yards that I feel comfortable with. Yeah, there are other yards. I was in Marblehead and I had some refrigeration work done, and I was pleased with going through the harbor master and was able to get that solved. But other than that, one thing I will say, and I'm sure there are others like when they vote, they know it's your boat, and they put a lot of pride in their work, and they've been around for 35, 40 years. They're on like their third generation, I think. So anyway, that's been my and I
Great. So, Walt, I think we just lost a little bit of the
had
audio.
a lot of duds
But the-
along my way. I'll tell you, no problem.
Yeah.
You got the gist.
Yeah, no, that's great. I don't see any questions coming through on chat. Any one question that anyone would like to throw out?
Well, here's a thank you everybody for your comments on the yards. My boat is 1973 and it's the original standing rigging. Can you believe it? And the rigger said to me when I asked him, well, you know, can you give me your opinion on this? And he says, I can't find any fault with it. Sure, it's, you know, it stands to reason it's certainly older than 10 years, so it should all be replaced, but I cannot see any fault. And he pointed out an example, and I'm not sure if all riggers do what I'm about to say these days or not. But he said, when your rigging was built, he said, where the like, for instance, a wire shroud comes down into a terminal that screws into a, you know, a deck or an attachment at the deck for the plates. He said, where that wire fits into that metal housing, it's filled up with molten lead or poured molten combination of lead, tin, whatever, to keep the water out. He says, if I remember him correctly, quoting him, he says, no other yard does that these days. So I'm wondering, you know, as if I had, you know, endless bottomless pockets to put the boat on a flatbed and send it up to Southwest Harbor, if they still do things that way, or nobody does things that way anymore. But it'd be nice to know if things are still done somewhere the Hinckley way.
Great question. And one of the, and Jeff can attest to this as well, things that we wanted to do this year was rediscover Hinckley. And we know that they're under new management as of 2 years ago. And there's been a lot of changing of heads and ways and methods. And sailboats have become, you know, they're on the executive level of management at Hinckley. Some real sailors, not all yacht, you know, motor yacht. So anyway, with that, I think we're going to get some answers. We do plan on engaging in some conversations with the new management, Terry.
Yeah, that's good. Again, just another quick story with Oxford and Southwest Harbor. I've been after a Hinckley bow roller ever since I bought the boat, and I approached Oxford, and it was a horror story. They didn't know what I was talking about. They hemmed and hawed and said they had to contact Southwest Harbor. Long story short, several years went by, and I just threw up my hands and threw out an email up to Southwest Harbor. And the next thing you know, the yard manager contacted me and said, yeah, we can build you one. And the guy that built the bow roller worked there apparently 30 years ago when they were still building them. And he had all the templates, and he built a brand new one. It's a beautiful piece of work. It's a piece of jewelry. And, you know, it's 3/16 high grade stainless. It's gorgeous. And I'm reluctant to have any yard around here locally mounted on the boat because I'm afraid they won't countersink the holes properly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that Hinckley is reputed to have done the right way, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Terry, what year did you have that bow roller made?
It was only a couple years ago. Maybe 2019. The yard manager is still there. I forget his name. He runs the whole operation at Southwest Harbor. I can get those all the contact names to you. I still have everything.
No, thanks so much, Terry. It looks like you know, it's such a beautiful day out. We did have another you know, kind of, we usually do the Jeopardy thing. I think tonight, given that we're at the bottom of the hour in 2 minutes, we're going to skip over the Jeopardy. As you know, this is where the members can ask a question for $300 and have a panelist answer. And then we try to fit in as many questions as possible within, you know, 15 minutes. And then I keep score and we compare month to month how we do in terms of numbers of questions. So I have shown here that last time we did 6 questions. So we're going to skip over this if you don't mind, and I'm going to move to close this call. And any final questions that anyone would like to ask of the panelists or of each other, please feel free. And then we're going to move to close the call.
I have one question.
Okay, Ray.
It's like when you're flying the business staysail, where is the tack attachment point? Do you put it in that little hard thing in the middle of the deck, or one of the stanchion bases, or where do you put it?
Both. I used to put mine on the stanchion, you know, where it was braced. But since you've given me the attachment, that's what I'm going to use to fly it in the future.
There you go.
Okay, well, good.
Hey, by the way, any other questions that come in, either we'll move them to the end of April, which we are looking to perhaps have, you know, first of all, we want to know about your work. We're keeping a log of your work. And also we're looking to have additional speakers if you're interested in being a panelist, new topics. But any questions, we'll move them and cover them off at the end of April. And our hope is to have it the last Friday of every month, such as April 30th. So I thank everyone, the panelists particularly, for their time and effort and joining us, and everyone who joined today. I hope you enjoy this beautiful, beautiful weather, and have a great weekend.
It was fun.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Fair
Thank
winds.
you.
Well done.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
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 Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.